Let's talk about wind instruments. Wind instruments are the ones that we blow through in order to make sound. Remember, there are two different families of wind instruments, woodwind instruments and brass instruments. We'll talk about string instruments and percussion instruments another time. When we blow through wind instruments, we need the air to vibrate really quickly to make a sound, like a hummingbird whose wings flap fast enough to buzz. In woodwind instruments, we blow across a wooden reed. The reed is small and flexible, like a hummingbird wing, and when it vibrates, it makes a musical sound. In brass instruments, our lips buzz together, making the air vibrate through the instrument. Remember, just like boomwhackers, fatter instruments play lower sounds. Shorter and skinnier instruments play higher sounds. Let's start with our woodwind instruments. The first is the saxophone. The saxophone was invented by a man named Adolphe Sax, and so the instrument was named after him. The saxophone is mostly heard in jazz music, and not so much in big symphony orchestras. The saxophone looks like it could be a part of the brass family, with its yellow color and bell shape of the horn. But because it has a wooden reed and many keys, it is in fact a woodwind instrument. Charlie Parker was one of the most famous saxophone players of all time. Next is the clarinet. The clarinet is usually black with many silver keys. It has a warm sound. Here is a picture of the clarinet mouthpiece. You can see the reed here, attached to the rest of the mouthpiece. The clarinet is a medium-sized woodwind instrument that plays middle and high notes. Many famous jazz musicians play the clarinet, like Benny Goodman and Squidward. Next is the oboe. The oboe is similar to the clarinet, in that it is about the same size, is black, and has many silver keys. However, the oboe has a double reed. Instead of a single piece of wood tied to a mouthpiece, the oboe has two pieces of wood tied together. This makes a more nasally sound, like the instrument has a big nose. In the story of Peter and the Wolf, the duck's theme song is played by the oboe because of the duck's large bill. The bassoon is another woodwind instrument with a double reed. But because it is so much bigger than the oboe, it plays much lower sounds. The bassoon is very difficult to play and very expensive if you want to buy one. This metal thing coming off the side of the bassoon holds the reed, and it is called a bocal, B-O-C-A-L. Here's a fun fact. Many instruments have been updated many times since they were invented, but the bassoon has been made the exact same way since the year 1850. The last woodwind instrument we'll talk about is the flute. The flute is one of the smallest woodwind instruments, and so it plays very high notes. The flute has many keys like all of the other woodwind instruments, but if you went to buy a flute today, you would not find any bit of wood. So why is it in the woodwind family? The flute used to be made of wood. For a flute to make sound, the air vibrates because we blow across the mouthpiece like a soda bottle. The oldest known flute is 35,000 years old. That long ago, the Sahara Desert still had water, and dogs hadn't even become pets to humans yet. So, our wind instruments are the saxophone, the clarinet, the oboe, the bassoon, and the flute. There are other less common instruments in the woodwind family, but for now, let's keep talking about the other half of the wind instrument family, the brass instruments. Let's talk about the different kinds of brass instruments now. All brass have a cup-shaped mouthpiece, are brassy yellow in color, and have a bell shape to the horn. Most have buttons, but they're not called keys. Instead, they're called valves. Brass instruments are made by heating and hammering brass a kind of metal, into the correct shape. The trumpet is the smallest brass instrument, so it plays the highest notes. The trumpet has 3 valves. By pressing the valves, certain tubes are opened and certain tubes are closed. This changes the path that the air must travel. If the air has to travel farther from your mouth to the bell of the instrument, the sound will be lower. If the air's path is shorter, the sound will be higher, just like a boomwhacker. The oldest trumpets date back to King Tut from Egypt, but those did not have valves. Wynton Marsalis is one of the most famous living jazz musicians, and he plays the trumpet. Next, the French horn. The French horn plays notes that are in the middle range. The horn plays very mellow, gentle sounds. Plus, when on stage, you point the bell backwards, and you put your hand inside. Therefore, the French horn sounds like it is being played from far away. The French horn is one of the only brass instruments that can have 4 valves instead of just 3. The trombone is one of the lowest sounding brass instruments. By moving the slide out, the trombone makes a lower sound because the instrument becomes longer. If the slide is all the way in, it will play higher notes. The trombone is very important in marching band music and jazz music. Trombone players must memorize how far in and out to push the slide to play the right notes, which can be very difficult. Last is the tuba. The tuba is the biggest and lowest sounding brass instrument. This means the mouthpiece of the tuba is the biggest, too. The tuba was invented in 1835 in Russia, and so it is one of the youngest instruments. Because the low notes of the tuba are so powerful, you only need 1 or 2 tubas in a symphony orchestra, where you might need 8 trumpet players to make the same amount of sound. So, these are our brass instruments: the trumpet, the French horn, the trombone, and the tuba.